Andy. Welcome to the Trail Runners Association Hong Kong China podcast. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Very well, Jenny. Great to be here.
Yeah, and speaking of which, where are we exactly?
We are in Nepal. We're at the Thupten Choling Monastery, which is en route to Everest Base Camp, but that's not where we're going. But for those who know Nepal, we are kind of close, a couple of days walk from Lukla, which is the airport you fly in to go to Everest Base Camp.
Fantastic. And how's the camp been going so far?
It's been amazing. We've had fantastic weather, fantastic group of people, and some fantastic scenery. It's been really good.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree, although I've not been very well for some of it.
You've done all right. You've done all right.
So what gave you the idea to do a trail running camp in Nepal in particular?
Well, two reasons. One, Nepal is such an amazing country, and I think a lot of the times when we think about Nepal, we think of trekking and high altitudes and stuff, and I thought to myself, well, that's not really trail running. Like when you're at 5,000 plus metres, you're not running at all. But I had the idea of seeing if we could find some lower routes still with very scenic views and great trails to see if we could keep it down to a level where we could run. So after chatting with my contact in Nepal, Preeti, we came up with this kind of route that we're doing now that's allowed us to hike up the hills but run most of the flats and run most of the downhills. So that was one thing. And the second thing, I just love travelling. I love showing people that haven't been to a place like this what it's like and what the trails are like and what the scenery's like and what the culture's like. And it's been a great experience seeing everyone else appreciate Nepal, the culture, the scenery and the trails, you know, looking at from their point of view rather than from me because I've been here before. So it's been really good.
Yeah, and aside from the things you mentioned in terms of enjoying the scenery and the culture, are you hoping that participants will be able to take anything else away from the camp?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, one, an appreciation for what trail running can do for you. Like, we couldn't have done these trails. If you did have the fitness to run the downhills and hike strongly in the uphills, this trip would have taken probably twice as long. So, you know, trail running gives you the opportunity to travel to new locations and go to these fantastic places and enjoy them more so than if you had to trek. So that's one thing. Two, obviously, everyone's going to leave this trek stronger climbers and stronger descenders, just from the nature of the camp. Plus, we put a bit of focus on the cultural aspect, the Buddhism aspect, and how that ties into the mental strength of trail running. I've given a few talks on developing the mindset of trail runners, so hopefully people come away with a few tips and tricks for developing their mindset for trail running.
That reminds me that I should have asked at the beginning for you to give a bit of background on who you are. Obviously you're a coach, but what is your relevance to Hong Kong trail runners?
Yes, I've been working with Hong Kong athletes for, must be close on 10 years now. I started coaching Stone and Chung back 2015, somewhere around there. I coached Jeff Campbell, Ryan Whelan, and probably got 30% of my client base is from Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
So I've got quite a few Hong Kong athletes. I know all the trails in Hong Kong. I've coached people to do Hong Kong 4 trails, Hong Kong 100, 9 Dragons. You know, I've done a few training camps in Hong Kong back before COVID. 2 or 3 times I came to Hong Kong to do training camps with race-based Sikar and Michael Ormston. So yeah, got quite a strong connection with Hong Kong and been there 3 or 4 times now and love it every time I come there. Great bunch of people, great trails and great trail running community.
Have you done many trails in Hong Kong yourself?
Done a few. Like I've done a few on the camps. Done Dragon's Back, is it? Yep, done that. Done a few runs on Lantau. Done a few runs on the 9 Dragons course. Not enough. I'd like to do more, but didn't have much time, so keen to get back and explore more.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that you've done other trail running camps in Hong Kong. So how does this camp in Nepal compare to other camps that you've done?
It's very different, very, very different. The one in Hong Kong we kind of organise as a run on the course and then a 2 or 3 hour discussion in the afternoon on training principles. I've done quite a few in New Zealand which were similar. We'd do a 4 hour run in the morning, then an hour discussion in the afternoon. I've done one in Abu Dhabi into the mountains which border Oman. I think that's all. But this is very, very different because we're really immersed in the Nepalese culture and surroundings and stuff. It's much more an immersive camp rather than the other ones which we just run in the morning, drink beer and chat in the afternoon. Whereas here's just got a really strong cultural identity which we've been able to tap into with visits to the monasteries and shaman and monks, and which has been great, and tying that into developing the mental strength of trail runners. So it's been very, very different. Also, we're just so much more remote. We're so much more removed from society. You know, in the New Zealand camp and the Hong Kong camp, we always came back to civilization, whereas here we're in a remote monastery in the middle of the Himalayas. So it's a much more immersive experience, which I think has been fantastic.
And are you planning to do any more camps, or thinking about doing any more camps in the future?
Yeah, I've got a contact in Bhutan, so I'd like to do one in Bhutan. And this camp looked like it's gone really well, so I think there might be a demand to do one again in Nepal. No date or anything as yet, but once I finish this camp and review it and so forth, I think I'll try and set some dates for one in Nepal and one in Bhutan, hopefully.
Sounds fantastic. Now, I have lots more questions for you, but
Awesome.
I'm going to keep this short because the bandwidth is not that great here in remote parts of
No, it's
Nepal,
not.
and I'm worried that the video might not go through. And also, it's good to leave people a cliffhanger for the next one. So I'll thank you for your time
Pleasure.
so far.
Good chatting to you, Jenny.
And hopefully chat again in
Chat
a few
again
days'
soon.
time. Next time we get somewhere that has decent internet,
Awesome.
which might be a few days.
Might be a while now.
Hello, Andy, and welcome to the Trail Runners Association of Hong Kong, China podcast. How are you today?
Not too bad at all, thanks, Jenny. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks. I'm sorry that we didn't manage to finish this episode while we were in Nepal, but I know things got busy, and I know you weren't in the best of health when I was nagging you to do podcasts in Nepal, but
It all got a bit chaotic there towards the end, and yeah, I wasn't feeling the best. I didn't think listeners wanted to hear me cough and splutter over the microphone, but I'm much better now, so I'm all good to answer your
very good.
questions.
yeah. And has Sana arrived in Byron Bay?
It's
you're back
getting
there?
there. It's 26-ish. It's warming up, but it's still not hot as yet. So it's quite nice for running at the moment. So I'm enjoying that while I can, because it's going to be hot and humid pretty soon.
Yeah, it's really nice for running in Hong Kong at the moment.
Yes, you're getting into your good season for running. Everyone's commenting on how much nicer it is to run in the cooler weather.
Definitely. So just finishing off from where we left when I last spoke to you in Nepal, I was talking about some of the athletes that you coach, and of course you also coach Sunmaya Budha, who many runners in Hong Kong are familiar with because she's been winning a lot of our races. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about what you think makes her such an exceptional athlete. Obviously, she came second in the World Trail Championships recently, which was against a really stacked field, and she was just behind Katie Scheid. So, what do you think makes her such a great runner?
So it's interesting when you talk about what makes a good runner. I mean, a lot of the qualities she's got, all the top runners have. So there's a difference between what gets a runner from average. When I say average, I mean winning kind of country level races versus winning international races. And then there's what separates the very, very best to just the good runners. So for her, like any elite athlete, she's extremely driven, extremely motivated, extremely competitive. And those qualities, are pretty standard amongst any kind of elite runners. She's in an interesting position where obviously she can train at altitude. Most of her runs are at 2,000 metres or above. Often she'll be going up to 3,000, 4,000 metres doing hill repeats and hill sessions. That's one advantage she has over other athletes in terms of just where she lives and the terrain and altitude she can train on. She's probably one of the world's best descenders. Like, she outran Katie in the last kind of 30k of the world champs. Katie wasn't being pushed, so we don't know whether, if Sunmaya was kind of like breathing down Katie's neck, whether Katie could have run faster. But from previous races in CCC, when she came second, she also ran faster than the first place. I've forgotten her name, escapes me at the moment. But consistently she's run faster downhill than the rest of the best athletes in the world. So that's one skill that, look, it's hard to teach, as you know. It's a hard thing to develop downhill skills. You can to a degree, but someone like her, she's just exceptional running downhill. So any race with any kind of long technical descents, she's going to do well at. We've worked hard on her climbing, and her climbing is probably as good as anyone in the world. The thing we're really trying to work on is her speed, so we can get her up to the front of the pack at the very start of the races, to put her in a position where she could win these races rather than coming second. And we just about got her there. I mean, she had a fantastic race at the World Champs. But like any athlete, like Sunmaya's just, she's a fierce competitor, and she will run herself into the ground. Like a couple of the races she's won, she's had some injuries that have popped up with 20k to go that she just managed to completely block out and win the race, and then we've had to deal with the fallout from that, in the 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, getting her over that. So very, very determined. The other thing that's different for her compared to, say, someone like Katie is, comes from a very, very different background. Like Sunmaya comes from rural Nepal, where jobs and income is such a different kind of level to someone who lives in the Western world. So, for Sunmaya, winning races makes a huge difference to the financial state of both her and her family. Whereas the prize money in ultra running for someone who lives in the West is far, far less and doesn't have that same kind of ramifications. So just an extra level of motivation for someone who lives in the third world, coming from that kind of background to do well. So I'm sure that's part of it as well.
Sure, although that's also a disadvantage in terms of some resources. Like I know you mentioned to me that it's difficult to access physios, and also she has trouble getting visas to go to some countries, so she doesn't know whether she's going to be able to attend the race or not.
Yeah, look, there are some challenges, like for Sunmaya, and also Coach's sister Ramaya is an up-and-coming runner whose Hong Kong athletes might know, because she won the Hong Kong 50 and set the course record, I believe. So for both of them, just to give you an indication of what it's like, if you want to travel to another country, I know for an Australian passport, and I think probably for a Hong Kong passport, you don't need a visa for a lot of countries. You can just book your flight, off you go, rock up at the passport control, stamp it, and away you go. And Nepal is one of the worst passports to have. So for almost every country she goes to, she's got to get a visa. Now that may sound like a trivial little thing, but for her, it's either a 21-hour bus ride or 2 flights, which takes a whole day just to get to Kathmandu. Her village is a 2-hour walk to the nearest airport. So these things are not trivial. Like, it's a major pain in the butt. Imagine if you had to catch a 21-hour bus ride just to get a visa. It's a big thing. So that's your disadvantage. Like, she can't go to the local sports store and stock up on gels. Like, there is no sports store within 20 hours of where she lives. So, those things we take for granted, that we can just get gels or sports drinks or whatever whenever we want. We can stock up on equipment. All of that has to be planned ahead, way ahead. Any kind of niggles, the closest physio is in Kathmandu, which is 2 flights or a 20-plus hour bus ride. So dealing with stuff that, as an elite athlete, you just pop into your local physio and get a massage or whatever it is to keep these niggles at bay. We don't have that availability to do stuff like that. We have to manage it a bit more emotionally. So it does add an extra layer of difficulty with her. So there are some advantages, but there's certainly some challenges that she has to overcome as well.
Sure, and obviously Nepal has a lot of very talented athletes and runners who I've seen babies in Nepalese villages who learn how to climb stairs before they can actually walk. So there's a lot of talent there which is not being tapped so far, partly because of the economic development of Nepal. What do you think would it take to change that and have more Nepalese athletes be successful on the world stage at trail running?
Well, the biggest thing, from Sunmaya's point of view and Ramaya, that they were lucky enough that Ryan from APA team in Hong Kong found them, and then he had some funding to get them to Hong Kong to race internationally, and then they performed in Hong Kong. Then sponsorship came from that. So now Calais, her shoe sponsor, and Coros, watch sponsor and stuff, she's got funds to travel internationally, to compete internationally. So for the elite Nepalese runners, just winning races in Nepal is not enough to attract enough sponsorship to compete internationally. So there's just not enough market there for sponsors to kind of invest in a Nepalese athlete unless they're competing on a world stage. So really the biggest problem is funding, is how do we get funding to these up-and-coming Nepalese athletes to get them to places like Hong Kong to perform well, and to perform well enough to attract an international sponsor to then be able to fund travel and stuff. And that's probably the biggest stumbling block, because there's stacks of good athletes there. It's just really to take them to the next level, to get them beyond the level of just winning or podiuming races in Nepal, to get them to kind of world championship level, to winning races in Hong Kong or any other races in Asia. It's purely a funds issue. It's a case of how can we get funds to those athletes to get them on a plane to races, entry into races, to show the world what they can do. Once that's problems have been solved, then there's a stack of Nepalese athletes that I think could compete well on the world stage. We just haven't seen them yet because they haven't got the funding. So how we resolve that, I don't know. There's a few things we talked about in private on the camp that we've just been on. But it's just a funding issue for a lot of them.
Sure, and I didn't realise until I looked up Sunmaya's profile on DV just now that she's been competing in ultras since 2016. And she did her first race in Hong Kong in 2016. And she was only about 18 years old, which is just phenomenal that she was winning races at that young age. So she obviously got talent. She obviously got talent spotted within Nepal before she got the attention of people outside of Nepal.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the only way. We look at athletes in up and coming nations and see who might be the new kind of Sunmaya or the new whoever. And where there's funding, we can help out with that. But yeah, all those athletes that have been discovered that are on the Asia Pacific Adventure team, they've all performed well at whatever country, whether it be Thailand or Nepal or Philippines or wherever. Perform well at a national level to identify they've got talent. And then Ryan's had a chat with them and I've had a chat with them. We've worked out, do they have what it takes mentally, and are they keen enough? Are they willing to do the work to take that step to the next level? And obviously with someone like Sunmaya, that's the other good thing about Sunmaya. I mean, I map out the programs for her every week and she just does what she's told. There's never any kind of argument or never any discussion, there's never any excuses about why she couldn't do a session. She just does the training. And if you do the right training and you've got the talent, then you're going to get the results.
Sounds very true. So you must find it very rewarding to see an athlete like her that you've coached being right up there at the top level. So how rewarding do you find elite athletes' success compared to some of your non-elite runners that you coach? Who are just out there to achieve whatever goal they might have.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, the biggest reward comes from athletes that put in the work, who stretch themselves a little bit, bite off something that they initially may have thought, I'm not sure if I can do this or not, and then put in the work and actually achieve what they set out to do. That doesn't matter whether they're coming first in the World Championships or making the cutoff at UTMB. From a coach's point of view, the biggest buzz I get is those athletes that really put themselves out there and say, Andy, look, I've got this big goal. I'm not sure if I can do it or not. I want your help with it. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'll put the work in. And they do that, and then they succeed. That's whether they're running 21 hours at UTMB or 46 hours at UTMB. From my personal point of view, I get just a bigger buzz about someone who's just made the cutoffs at UTMB versus Sunmaya coming second. Obviously, from a business point of view, coaching elite athletes, that gets more publicity and more attention, and that helps. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy coaching those elites and putting myself as a coach on the world stage. Of course I do. But to run a business, you can't just have elite athletes. You need to have a spectrum of athletes because there's just not enough elite athletes in the world to make a business coaching. So those back of the pack athletes and mid pack athletes, those athletes that just really put themselves out there and do all the work, they're extremely rewarding to coach. I get a huge buzz when I kind of look at the results and go, oh, awesome, all the hard work's come off. And it's just such a thrill as a coach to work with people like that are prepared to step outside their comfort zone, put in the hard yards, and then get the rewards for doing that.
Fantastic, that's great to hear. So there are obviously a lot of coaches nowadays. I think you were probably one of the first to getting into specific trail ultramarathon coaching. But now there are lots of coaches, and many of them have runners who get good results. And so, what makes your approach different to other coaches?
Yeah, look, there are a stack of coaches out there, and look, when it comes to ultras, the thing we know from all the research is that the typical parts of running, the typical metrics, the typical measures we have of running fitness, like VO2 max and lactate threshold and running economy, and all those typical measures where you look out for marathon and shorter distances, they can only account for 50 to 60% of performance in ultras. So the other 40% really comes down to the coach and what the coach does with the athlete, all the different ways we can train people. So for ultras, there's just so many different ultras which require so many different ways of training, from big long ascents and descents to more runnable ultras to more technical ultras. So there's so much variability there. So any good ultra coach has got to have a big bag of tricks, a big kind of toolkit of different ways to train people to get the best out of them. So I think one advantage I've had, I've been doing it for, I've been a full-time online ultra coach now for 15 plus years, and before that was just coaching in person at the local gyms, whatever. So I've got a stack of experience. The thing that comes with experience, and when I say experience, I'm talking full-time experience, like I coach full-time, like I do nothing else. Other coaches have got other jobs, and I'm coaching as part-time. But experience by itself is not the main thing. It's learning from your experience. So when you learn from your experience, you start seeing patterns in athletes. Like when you've coached hundreds and hundreds of athletes, as I've done, you start seeing patterns. You start seeing that when an athlete's doing this kind of race, this kind of training works really well, and this kind of training doesn't work well. And you start seeing different athletes respond differently to different training sessions. So you gain a lot of knowledge about the individuality of training responses. So what I mean by that is if I've got two athletes both training for Hong Kong 100, I'm going to train them differently based on their strengths and weaknesses. One person might have good 10k speed, one person's got good, trail speed. They will be trained differently. One person might be a better climber, one person might be a better descender. So from a coaching point of view, it's really looking at an individual's strengths and weaknesses, looking at the demands of the race and calling upon all that experience and all the different people you've coached to fine-tune the best approach for that athlete. So there's not many full-time coaches out there. I mean, there are some for sure, but I think that's one advantage I have, is that wealth of experience I've got, and 15 plus years of full-time coaching just means there's a lot for me to draw upon. The second thing with coaching, and look, I'm not alone in doing this, there's plenty of good coaches out there, and I'm not trying to put any other coaches down at all, but those coaches who stay up to date with the latest research will always be busy and will always be the best coaches. Research is ongoing, it changes all the time. What we thought was gospel 10, 15 years ago, we now know is not true at all. So as a coach, if you're not spending hours per week staying up to date with the latest research, then you're never going to be the best coach you can be. And I know for me, as I've talked to you about, is on Fridays is my admin and my research day. And there's barely a week that goes past where I don't spend 4 or 5 hours looking at research articles that have popped up on all my information sources. I think that's another thing any good coach is going to be doing. They want to be staying up to date with the latest research, so you can follow the research, but also staying up to date with different coaches. Like, I'm still learning from other coaches and other coaches are learning from me. Like, we're all learning from each other. We're all testing out different things in our training. Like a good example is Scott Johnson with Ruth and Tom, talking about weighted uphill hiking. It's something I've been doing for my clients for quite a while as well. So it's great to see that come to prominence, that, long uphill hiking can be a great way to train for UTMB. So all these top level coaches, and we're all kind of contributing to the best practice in coaching ultra athletes. We're not islands. We always look out for each other to see what we're all doing and learning from each other. So I think, when you think you know it all, that's when you can stop being a good coach. So I'm always learning and always adapting, and any good coach is going to be doing the same.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing I've noticed, though, about you compared with other coaches, that you speak to your athletes weekly and it's individual plans. Like, I know some coaches speak to their athletes once a month, and they might be doing less individual tailoring, but doing something that's for a group, which may not be specific to the individual.
Group training. Look, anytime I take a new athlete on and they do some group training, there's an important distinction to be made in terms of what's the group doing and how effective is that group session for their goals, versus if they stop going with the group and train by themselves and did what I told them to do, how effective would that be, balanced against the enjoyment of running? So sometimes what the group's doing is like, your group's doing 300 meter sprints. You've got a 100k race coming up in 6 weeks' time. It's really not good training for you. So I'm not going to have a chat about, I think for this next 6 weeks or so, I think we should step away from the group and do this for these reasons. But sometimes what the group does is, look, it wouldn't be what I prescribe them, but it's still a pretty good session. So then it's a case of, look, how much do you enjoy training with the group? How much harder are you pushing yourself with the group versus pushing yourself by yourself? So it's that balance between keeping the running training enjoying, because most people aren't full-time athletes. They do it for fun. The group is a social outlet as well. And if you take that social outlet away, the athlete might not enjoy their training as much. They don't push as hard, and therefore the training session is not as effective. So it's a discussion we have with group training as to that balance between enjoying the training, pushing hard, staying motivated, between how effective is that training session for the race they're doing. In terms of weekly programs and feedback, look, I think any serious coach needs to be talking to their athletes on a weekly basis. I think any more than that, and you're any less than that, and you're kidding yourself as far as being personalised. Because if you're doing a speed session every week or a hill session every week or whatever, and you haven't fed back to the athlete, okay, that was a great session, or well, how come you didn't push as hard this week compared to last week, and talked about why, as we've often done, Jenny, then the athlete can't really learn and progress the following week. They're kind of waiting for a month till they talk to their coach again to learn what they did for that month, and then able to kind of build upon that. So I think if you're not getting feedback and be able to talk to your coach every week, then it's not the best coaching model. It may be a more affordable coaching model. You know, your coach may be charging less and you can't afford to pay more. That's fine. That's a different conversation. But in terms of best coaching practice, unless the coach is getting regular feedback, weekly feedback from their athletes, then I don't think that's the best coaching practice at all.
Sure. And how about kind of personal coaching style? Sorry, this is a little bit of a joke question. On a scale from David Goggins, if he was a coach, God forbid, who might say you're shit and need to work harder, suffer more, to David Roche, who probably says that you're awesome and I love you, where would you put yourself in that spectrum?
I will put myself probably smack bang in the middle of that. Those of you who are coached by me know that I kind of try to tell things as they are. So like if an athlete comes to me and says, look, Andy, I want to do this race, it's in this many weeks, what do you think are my chances? If I honestly believe you haven't got a chance in hell, I will tell you that. I'm not going to say you're awesome, you can do anything you want, when the data suggests you can't. Having said that, you know, I'm also of the belief that we can achieve more than we think we can. So some positive reinforcement and some, you know, encouragement on getting to those ambitious goals is also helpful. But there's a fine line between being overly optimistic and you can do anything versus encouraging and saying, you know, this is possible. If you do this work, you know, there is a chance you can do that. I think, look, you know, I'm 100% against the Goggins approach, and you know, if you read the research on mental training and encouragement and motivation, it all goes completely against what Goggins does. Look, it works for him, great. It might work for some of your listeners, fine if it works for you. But in terms of the research, in terms of what works for most people, it doesn't work. In terms of Roach's approach, look, some people love him, that's fine if you're motivated by that, but I think there's got to be some constructive criticism on training. There's got to be sometimes where your coach says, how come you didn't do that? Like, what's going on? Like, you said you were going to, we talked about this, we said this is realistic, we agreed upon that. What's going on? You're missing sessions. Like, what's happening? Have a conversation rather than go, oh, you're awesome, I'm sure you're doing the best you can. Like, just keep with it, keep sticking at it, you'll get there. Like, there's got to be an honest conversation. And I think as a coach, unless you can offer constructive criticism, then you're not doing your job as best as you can be.
Sure, and maybe he does give constructive criticism. Maybe he does,
Yeah, no, totally. And that's not saying what Roach does. I don't know. I've never been coached by him, so I don't know. But I'm just saying that, yeah, that constructive criticism needs to be given to be the best coach. Yeah.
Sure. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of runners who could benefit from having a coach, but think they're and they might have the money to afford a coach, but they think they're too busy. I know quite a few people that have said that. What would you say to those people?
Look, if you're busy, which most people are. Look, most of my clients are busy professionals. You know, if you're busy, well, most of my clients are busy. And one reason to have a coach when you're busy is, like, if you're busy, you've got limited training time. It's not like you can do 15, 20 plus hours a week. You might only have 8 or 10 hours a week to train. So where the coach comes in is, well, you tell me how many hours a week you can train and I'll maximize the training benefit you get from that 8 to 10 hours a week. So I think busy is kind of a reason to have a coach, not a reason not to have a coach. Because unless you have a coach's knowledge, how do you know how to get the best out of your training? I think that there are some people who I would say aren't really coachable. Some people don't like structure, don't like routine. They like to kind of like wing it, see how they feel, run by feel. And look, I've had a few inquiries from people like that, and after a conversation we've kind of said, look, I don't think this is going to work for you. I think for these reasons, I think you're better off just winging it and doing it yourself, because I think based on experience I'm going to give you a program and you're not going to do it. No point you paying me to give you advice when you're just going to wing it. So I think there are some people that aren't coachable. The other people that kind of, maybe not that they aren't coachable, but some people like to devise their own training plans. Some people like to take on the responsibility. They want to learn more. They want to coach themselves. So for those people, I have done kind of like one-on-one sessions where we just chat for an hour, and I give them some information. We talk about training. I give them a few principles, a few ideas, throw some stuff at them. They go away for the next few months or however long, and then take that information and apply it to their own training. So the dilemma then for people who want to coach themselves is that, well, why can't I just ask ChatGPT? Like, why can't I just look up on the internet and it'll tell me everything I need to coach? I can say to ChatGPT, I am training for Hong Kong 100. I want to do 16 hours. I can run 10 hours a week. Here's my best times and my other races. Create a training plan for me. And ChatGPT will create a training plan. But what people forget is AI is just scanning information on the internet and just putting together on the probability of what it thinks each word should be, what the next word should be. It's a language model. It's not a coach. It hasn't been programmed for best coaching practices. It hasn't gone through thousands of athletes' data. It hasn't had 15 years of experience of coaching people. It hasn't got all the information. Maybe down the track it might be. Maybe down the track 2, 5, 10 years time, you'll be able to plug in all my experience, all the data and everything, and ChatGPT may be able to be a fantastic coach. But right now, it hasn't. So right now, any kind of AI model coaching plan is just based on what it thinks is good. The problem with that, of course, is Google's not always right, particularly for ultras, particularly when it comes to ultras, because as I said before, like 40% of race results we can't predict, because the studies haven't kind of come up with how we can predict that, like what is the best training outcome. For a marathon, for a flat road marathon, we can be much more confident in what the best way is to train. There's still some variability, but we can be much more confident. For ultras, there's so much variability, and we can't predict that. So trusting an AI model to get that right for you just seems to be risky, and there's just not enough evidence to show that it's a good way to do that. Can it be better than just making it up yourself? Probably, like depending on your level of knowledge and experience, it might be better than just what you were doing previously. Would it be as good as an experienced coach? No way at all. It's definitely not as good as an experienced coach. You can have a conversation with ChatGPT. You can tell, look, I'm feeling tired, blah, 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 what should I do? But again, it's just falling back on what's on the internet rather than the experience of a coach. And as I said before, what's on the internet can often be wrong. There's so much stuff that is commonly believed on the internet that's actually been scientifically proven to be wrong, yet stacks and stacks of runners, bloggers, even other coaches still believe it's correct. So you're pulling from a database of some stuff that's right, some stuff that's maybe right depending on the circumstance, and some stuff that's completely wrong. And that's the information ChatGPT or any other AI model is pulling from and giving you information. So it's a risk. And I'm not big on it for obvious reasons.
Sure, I think your job is probably secure for a little while longer.
I think so.
So could you give some examples of what you just mentioned, that things that would be commonly spouted on the internet that you don't think the data supports?
I could give stacks of examples. I could go on for hours about this, but I'll limit it to 2 or 3. All right, I'll limit it to 2 or 3. So there's one out there that says that anything longer than 2 hours for your long run, and you don't get any more benefits, and you shouldn't do a long run of more than 2 hours. That's quite a common one that was put forward by quite a high-profile female American ultra runner, and lots of people have agreed with that. Now, when you look at the research on that, it was done about 40 years ago and was done on rats. They ran rats to exhaustion, and they found after 2 hours there was kind of diminishing returns on mitochondrial development. Right, mitochondrial little cells in your muscles that process oxygen and help you run faster. But when you think about it from a logical point of view, like getting fitter is not purely about developing more mitochondria and developing the efficiency of your mitochondria. Like, we've got muscles that need to be strengthened. We've got tendons and ligaments that need to be strengthened. We've got a brain that needs to tolerate running for longer distances and learn the mental strategies. We've got stomachs that need to be tested and gotten used to taking in gels or whatever nutrition you've got. So the idea that anything longer than 2 hours is a waste is just completely missing the point. And if you're basing a training program on a study done 40 years ago by rats, then I think you can see that's probably not the best advice. Another common one, which I'm reading a lot on social media, is hill striking is bad and we should avoid hill striking, and midfoot striking is the most efficient way to run. Now, the problem with that is the kind of black and white kind of conversations that are being had. The hill striking is bad, midfoot striking is good, without any kind of context. So the argument goes that, well, all the faster runners midfoot strike, and that is 100% correct. You won't find a 100-metre sprinter that hill strikes. You won't find an 800-metre runner that hill strikes. But when you go slower, when you get to marathon level, 40 to 50% of the elite marathon runners hill strike. And when you go into ultra runners, the percentage increases even more. So hill strike is dependent on speed for one. And even when you look at ignoring speed for a second, you're completely ignoring the rest of the leg. Like there's hill strikers that, they extend their leg out in front and they land on an almost straight leg and increase the braking forces massively, versus hill strikers like the elite marathoners who land on a bent knee with their leg moving backwards to transfer the force to go forwards very, very efficiently. So there's just no evidence at all that you can say as a blanket rule hill striking is bad, midfoot striking is good. And anybody that says that just doesn't understand running biomechanics. Another common one I'm still seeing, despite the evidence, is that any more than 2% dehydration means you're going to negatively affect your performance, and you should minimize fluid loss, sweat loss to 2%. Otherwise, you're going to go backwards in your race. Yet there's never been a single study that's proved that, not a single one. And we know from studies on actual runners in races that the athletes that lose the most weight tend to be on the podium, and the athletes that lose the least weight tend to be at the very back of the pack. And where this kind of belief has come from is there have been studies that shown that more than 2% negatively affects performance, but in every single one of those studies, they were dehydrated before the test, or they were not allowed to drink water during the test. So what they're basically saying is if you start your race having sat in a sauna for 20 minutes and then not drink at all during your race, your performance will be negatively impacted. It's like, oh, no shit, Sherlock. No one's going to do that. Like, it's not the real world. What they haven't done is tested when athletes could start fully hydrated and drink to thirst. Now, in the real world, that's what happens. Elite athletes start fully hydrated and they drink to thirst. And they lose 4, 5, 6% body weight without compromising performance, setting world records. So yeah, that's 3 examples. I could go on and on and on, but yeah, there's plenty out there.
Sure, and there's also a matter of what when you try and apply things which elite athletes do to non-elite athletes, then there's some big practical considerations that come into it, such as like if you limit all your long runs to 2 hours, then athletes that succeed doing that whilst doing ultra marathons, they have a lot of free time, so they can work out twice a day, and they could do 2 hours every day, and then another shorter run in the evening. And
so that athlete, for example, she was doing 18 miles in the morning in the 2 hours, and then doing another 10 miles in the afternoon. So she was covering more than a marathon on her long run day, just not longer than 2 hours. Another example is Scott Johnson's training of Tom and Ruth. So now there's a whole discussion on, is weighted hiking uphill, is that the new way to increase your fatigue resistance? And I saw this in a Runner's World article, targeting all runners. Like, no, weighted uphill hiking is not the answer to fatigue resistance unless your race has a lot of uphill hiking. It's not going to improve your fatigue resistance to run a road marathon because it's hiking uphill. It's not running. The other thing with that is Ruth and Tom had 1 hour hills to hike up. If your hill is only 7 minutes, well, how much benefit do you get hiking up for only 7 minutes before you have to run back down again? No. The other thing, they use 10 kilograms in their pack to hike up with. Well, they're elites. That doesn't mean that, if you're targeting a 45-hour UTMB finish, you should be hiking with 10 kilograms because they're elite, you're not. You're probably better off doing 4 or 5 kilograms. Another factor is, Scott looked at Tom and Ruth and saw that their top end speed was fantastic. They had a huge amount of speed. So they didn't need to work on speed because the benefits in UTMB weren't going to come from increasing their speed even more. But if you're struggling to run 6-minute Ks, then you could benefit from increasing your speed so you can run downhill at a faster rate. So the application of some of these elite practices to age group and mid backpacker runners just doesn't work, and a good coach will explain why and be able to interpret that differently. Whereas, coaching yourself, and if you ask ChatGPT, it may not be able to distinguish between best practices for elites versus best practices for mid or backpack, because that's a lot less written about on the internet.
Sure, and also I think ChatGPT probably doesn't understand the difference in the terrain that you get in trail running, at least if the Strava AI is anything to go by, and doesn't understand altitude, certainly, because it kept telling me that I was having very relaxed hikes in Nepal when I was like struggling for breath at 4,000 meters.
Yeah. That'll all come in terms of AI, but we're certainly not there yet.
Sure. Now, a lot of runners probably can't afford to have a personal coach with individual training plans every week. So what can those runners do to improve their running?
Yeah, good question, because not everyone can afford a coach. So that's one reason why I've got a stack of information on the internet. There's a stack of Mile 27 podcasts on all kinds of topics, which, I'm not a big believer in teasing information and making you sign up for stuff to get better content. It's like all the stuff on podcasts is hopefully actionable, intelligent information that you can listen to, take in, apply to your own training and improve your own training. Got quite a lot of articles in the blog on mile27.com.au blog, same kind of thing. So yeah, for those of you who can't afford a coach, you want to learn more about how to train effectively, I highly recommend the podcast. And also, not only the Mile 27 one, there's stacks of good podcasts out there. If you've got the time but don't have the money, then there's stacks of good sources of information from knowledgeable coaches that you can learn a lot from. So yeah, just educate yourself, listen to some good podcasts, and apply that to your own training. It's certainly better than asking ChatGPT.
All right, well that sounds like a good place to end it today, Andy. Thanks a lot for your time. It's great.
Pleasure
to
as always, Jenny. Excellent.
Yeah, talk to you again soon. Thanks a lot.
See you soon. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
Good, Jenny. How are you?
Good. Welcome back to the TRAHK podcast. And what's been happening?
Loving the cooler weather for sure. Finally feel that all that work in the summer where I felt unfit, I finally feel a bit fit with the cooler weather. Can go a little longer, feel a little stronger on the trails, and just loving the conditions in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's been brilliant, and not having to carry so much water is great as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Just can go out there with a bottle or two and go for a few hours.
Yeah, I'm not even carrying anything on some of my runs.
Even better.
Yeah, so you've heard the interview with Andy. So what are your observations from that?
Yeah, no, I thought it was very interesting. I think we may have discussed on here before. I actually used Andy as a coach for a while as well. So I've worked with Andy, and I've worked with a few different...
Me too, for people who don't know.
Right. And we discussed it, right? And Andy helped me a ton. And I think everything, I'm not going to repeat all the things he said, but he did really help customize a training plan for me. And some of my strongest performances were under him as a coach. So I really, he really helped me, I think, build my maturity in trail running. And I think, I can see the difference. When I was first starting trail running, I was not having a trail coach, and I was kind of using a triathlon coach and doing some trail running and things like that. And just, I think as getting into more and more and trying to do more difficult races and more longer races and things like that, the value of having someone like an Andy or another coach out there is tremendous. Yeah, it's fun listening to him, and you can see his passion about it as well, and the concept that how he's a full-time, that's his job. So I know when I used him, I could message him, any day of the week, and he would have good back and forth and could get him on a call anytime. And I just thought his approach was really good, and he was able to, again, customize based on my schedule and all that stuff. So I thought, it was a good interview, and brought up a lot of good points.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that he's getting good results with his athletes, especially Sunmaya Budha, who clinched the World Trail Majors at the weekend with the Cape Town Ultra. That was a pretty amazing performance by her.
Yeah, I saw that. And I saw her and Man Yi had the same number of points, but Sunmaya got the title. What do you know why that was?
Yeah, because I looked at the rules as to who wins if there's a tie, and it's quite likely they're going to be a tie because you get 1,500 points for the win, and so anyone who gets 2 wins gets 3,000, and only your best 2 races count, so 3,000 is the maximum you can get. So they look at the ITRA scores that you earn from those races, and Sunmaya had a much higher ITRA score for the Hong Kong 100 win than Man Yi got for either of her 2 races.
Oh.
Because she got 800 and something points for the Hong Kong 100 win, because I think they get that by comparing your ITRA score and the people that are running that finish near you. So she probably beat some guys that had some ITRA points of over 800, and she was a long way ahead of the nearest woman, of course. But that goes for, I think, Man Yi and her wins as well. But Man Yi was beating guys who had low 700 scores, so she only got low 700 scores for her wins.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. I was curious about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing for both of them, actually. And I think you said Sunmaya's sister was 3rd as well?
Yeah, she came 3rd in the short course, so that was on the strength of her win in the Hong Kong 100 half as well, where she I'm sure beat some guys with high ITRA scores in that race. She had a superb run in that half, with the course being longer than the previous years as well, and really technical finish this past year, but that obviously didn't face her at all. And they scooped up quite a bit of money for the victory as well, which for Nepalese athlete is gonna go a long way. I think Sunmaya got 12,000 euros and Ranmaya 2,500.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure their expenses for flying around the world would soon eat up all that, but it has.
Well, hopefully the sponsors
Yeah.
help them a bit with that, and they can use that money for better things for themselves, families, and maybe other runners in Nepal to get on the scene as well.
Or build a new house for their family, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's great to hear some of Andy's comments to think about, challenging conventional wisdom, and these like studies with rats and stuff. That did make me laugh.
Yeah.
Running rats to exhaustion and things.
Yeah, I think the concepts of using AI and stuff. It is good now where you can get basic plans out of AI. I say basic, but pretty detailed plans. And my daughter actually has been running marathons and uses AI sometimes for building some simple plans and things like that. But I think, and Andy said it perfectly, as you get into these more complicated ultras, it's not as simple as just reading a plan. There's so many more aspects to it. And one of the other things, as you guys were talking about, that popped in my head was also like Hong Kong with all the steps and the stone and the concrete, right? That's a whole other strategy about training than if you were training in Colorado or even Nepal or other places, right? So if you're trying to run races in like Hong Kong 100 is probably about 50% concrete doing that race, and so training not just on the trails, but also running trails and then making sure you're running some catch water or some other concrete hills, and how to manage your legs going down some of these steep hills. Because I see some people flying down hills, other people going slow and conservative, and styles of running down hills, and all those things have to be taken into consideration when you're trying to do some of these races in different types of terrain and so forth. So yeah, I think if you're trying to perform better, or even if you're just trying to complete some of these things for the first time, it's really good having someone that has that experience and can give you a lot of pointers and tips and those things, which would be hard to get online, I think.
Yeah, and of course there are a lot of good coaches out there. And have you got any tips on what people should be looking for in a coach, depending on their circumstances and their situation, what they're looking for personally?
Yeah, I think, there's getting into it, I think, where maybe, and again, Andy could, I think, serve all people, so I'm not trying to say he wouldn't be ideal for this, but I think as you're getting into it, if you're trying to, hey, I want to do my first 15K, 20K, things like that. There's probably one kind of coach that's just about the basic principles of how do you use strength training, how much should you run a week, just basics about even using poles, not using poles, all those types of things, the basics around trail running that you could probably get with a little more simple coach approach type of thing versus, you're more established and now you're trying to get 10% faster, 15% faster, or you're trying to go to something like 4 trails or your first 100K or 100 miler or things like that, where it takes a lot more, I think, training and understanding all the various other concepts of, as you guys talked about, nutrition. How do I deal with cramping? How do I avoid blisters on my feet? What do I do if I get GI issues? How do I train on my fueling? There's so many things when you're getting into those 10, 20 hour multi-day types of races that takes a lot more. And then as you get more experience, I think then you start looking for other things. So I've started using Tomo, for example, who's gone 4 trails. He's Japanese, great trail runner, done 4 trails, and he also does coaching. And the reason I kind of went to Tomo now is because I do desire to do 4 trails, and he's done it twice. And so I'm starting to get really specific now on what I want out of a coach. Not so much around a general plan, but more around, okay, this course, how did you get through it? What do I do if I get to this situation? What do I do if I get to that situation? How do I avoid this? How do I avoid that? What's the best way to prepare myself for this part of the race and things like that? So I'm trying to get very, very specific. So I'm going very specific into the kind of person that I want to work with for this particular thing. And then after that, again, it may change again. So I think it really depends on, what you're trying to do. There's a lot of different coaches out there. And I think the best bet is to talk to somebody who's fairly experienced that can maybe help guide you to the right kind of coach based on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think complete beginners can probably get a lot of tips just from joining a running group and getting tips from people there. I mean, I'm giving advice and information to people all the time through Asia Trail Girls, and also people just contacting me out of the blue. Also, I think some people might want to work on their their form and efficiency. Then it might be good to get somebody in person who's actually in Hong Kong as opposed to a virtual coach who can actually see the way you run and give you specific, drills where they can actually see what impact that has, maybe on a treadmill if they're based in a gym.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not one coach for everything, right? Like sometimes, like you said, you may have one running technique. I have a separate, and I know you do too, a separate strength coach who, I do strength training with twice a week that is experienced trail runner as well, but he's helping me with specific strength training that's meant for what I'm trying to do and achieve as well. I also have a specific person for sports massage that understands how to deal with athletes and things like that. So as you get more and more into it, there's different people you need for different parts of it as well. Also, I used a nutritionist for a while as well to help with how to fuel, not just during running, but like during the week, and what I should be eating to best prepare, what should I eat before, what should I eat after, what should my diet be, and then when I am out there, what's the best types of foods based on, how do I train for that? So there's all sorts of different specialized people out there that you don't have to put them on the payroll, so to speak, but you can get help and advice from.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear that Andy is happy to have consultations with people, just to bounce ideas off and things rather than doing a training plan every week. So that could be useful to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I was actually looking at that for a while too. When I first started to talk to Tomo, I was like, hey, maybe I just want some consultation, like once a month or something like that. But I've decided to use him as a coach. But I was maybe looking at that type of technique as well. It's because I have you as well. Like we have a lot of experience. We've used different coaches. We've, done that type of thing. So part of it wants to do it on my own, but then part of it having that structure and someone to be accountable to is also helpful, and always to try to learn more and continue to learn and evolve as we continue in our trail running careers.
But if you were hiring a coach for the first time, what do you think might be good questions for people to ask that coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're new, like I said, some of the basics, like even like what kind of shoes should I buy? What kind of how should I fuel? How do I know how much water I should drink? You know, like let alone.
No, I'm talking about questions to consider whether they're a good fit as a coach for you or not.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I guess you have to explain what your goals are, right? And then if you're new, I would almost try to get some advice from friends who are into trail running first that can maybe point you in a direction, because I think, not to say that coaches are, you know, Andy said a couple times he didn't think it was a good fit, but I'm sure most coaches are trying to get more people on their training lists and stuff like that. So they may say what you want to hear, and you may not be experienced enough to know if that's good or not. It all sounds new to you, so you would agree. So I would almost encourage you to try to find a person that's a trail running friend, and like you said, through Asia Trail Girls or through other people, and get some advice, and that can then help maybe point them to the more appropriate kind of coaches based on what they're trying to achieve. Because it's all about, I think, the goals on what you're trying to do. You know, is this a 1-year plan? Is this I want to get fit plan? Is this a 6 months I want to try to run a 50K? All those different things, how much experience you have, all come into probably trying to find the right person.
Yeah, I see there's quite a lot of variety out there, in that some coaches seem to focus on treadmill workouts, even in Hong Kong where we have a lot of trails, and some like to get the athletes to go out running the similar terrain that they might be having in a race, and some want the athletes to do a lot of road running because then they can get more data coming back. So there is quite a lot of variability out there. And also just about personality, I think you need to chat to them and see whether the personality is a good fit. I think Andy is quite kind of understated with his praise, I would say. Like, if I feel like I really crushed a workout, he might say that it was good, or decent is probably is the highest praise I get. But I don't feel like I need somebody to be telling me that I'm crushing my runs all the time, but other people might feel that they need that.
Yeah, and especially people just getting into it, I think it's important, because I think finding that motivation, right, is sometimes hard when you're first getting into it. And even the type of workouts, right? Like I've learned to just love being on the trail so much more than on the road. You know I need to do road training, and I know I have to, but I dread, if you say go do a 20K road run, I'm like, oh my God. You say go do 5 hours on the Mac, I'm like, okay, let's go. You know, like it's a big difference. So as people are getting into it, you also probably have to find what they're really passionate about and try to get them to start building those habits, versus like dreading the workouts and not really enjoying it and embracing it. So it was hard for me, I know, to get going, with some of this stuff and building the right habits and finding the excitement and the happiness and the stuff I enjoy doing. So I think that's an important part of it, not just saying, okay, you must do treadmill because you're trying to do this. What do you enjoy? How do we get you to, build the habits, be excited about your workouts, not dread waking up early, those types of things, which are easy to say, hard to make stick sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, speaking of training and habits, how's your training been going?
Yeah, good. A lot of little niggles and things like that. I got some feet issues I've been battling, so it's been train, rest. So right now I'm resting again for a little bit. But when I am out on the trails, I'm feeling pretty good right now. Trying to get about 100K in a week, and trying to, again, mostly doing on the trails and stuff. So I'm feeling, besides the feet, the rest of the body is feeling pretty good. I think I've kind of dialed in some things with nutrition and fueling and sodium intakes and things like that. So I feel very confident on kind of mental and fueling techniques, and the body feels pretty good. It's just having some feet issues, and the feet are, I think, the most important part of the running I'm finding. So just gotta get those settled, and hopefully I'll be having some good long runs in the coming weeks. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing really well at the moment. I feel like I'm getting faster every week. I mean, the cooler weather helps, but I've been building up my training, and I went to Nepal for 2 weeks last month, and that was a lot of elevation and climbing training. So I think I feel pretty good coming off that. Although I ended up with like a really painful callus on my toe, because I realised that when I'm at home, then I'm kind of every day in the shower, just rubbing off a bit of that callus or filing it with a pumice stone. But when I was in Nepal, because we were in the mountains and there was often a queue for a shower, and it was really cold, so you wanted to have the shower as fast as possible, that I was not doing anything with my calluses. I didn't have my pumice stone with me, and so just like for over 2 weeks it just got to be huge and painful. So I've spent like 3 weeks patiently filing at it before it's finally, now it's not painful.
Yeah, little things can turn into big things pretty quickly.
Yeah, but I was just thinking I need to do some preventive things to prevent that kind of thing happening when I'm doing extra long ultras, because in February I'm doing the 9 traggers 50-50, so there's obviously not much time to recover from the 50 miles before the 50k the next day.
That's going to be a great challenge.
Yeah, it's effectively 100 miles with a bit of a sleep in the middle, so that would be my toughest challenge so far. So I'm actually training for that now more than the Hong Kong 100, because I think I could finish the Hong Kong 100 tomorrow. Well, maybe after a few rest days, but I know I can finish that, whereas I'm not sure I can finish the 50-50 within the cutoffs. So
are the cutoffs pretty aggressive, or?
The second day, yes. So the 50k, you have 12.5 hours. I did the virtual race a few years ago when I was 5 years younger, and it took me 11.5, which doesn't leave me much buffer to slow down, being fatigued from having done 50 miles the day before. I'm going to have to pace the 50 miles quite carefully, but that's still a long way away.
Yeah, well, it's coming quicker and quicker every day. It's less than 3 months now.
I know, because I've been trying to do some recce's of the 50 miles, so I know how long each section might take me, and realise that I've only got 2 possible weekends left before Christmas, because I'm going away to the UK for Christmas, and then I'll maybe have one chance when I get back, and then it'll be tapering for the Hong Kong 100, and then recovering from the Hong Kong 100, and before you know it, it's mid-February.
Yeah. Well, that'll be exciting. I'm sure you'll do awesome.
Well, I'm going to do my best. I was going to tell you, I heard on a podcast about something interesting. Somebody has tried a vertical backyard race, which...
A vertical backyard race?
Yes. Which is something that you wanted to do when we were planning the backyard race in DB last year. Remember, you wanted to have one that goes up Tiger's Head. And anyway, the vertical backyard... 2
hours instead of 1 hour. Yeah, that was the idea. My idea was you did Tigers, still 10K, but you did with Tigers, but you had 2 hours to complete it.
Okay. Well, this one, they actually only made it, it's 3.62 kilometers, but with 369 meters of elevation. And the idea behind that is that every 24 hours you do an Everest.
Oh, wow.
So they planned a route to get specific elevation, and then the kilometers don't really matter that much.
Right.
But I was actually looking around and thinking, where could we go to get that specific elevation? I was thinking maybe like, La Fa Tong, that peak that's below Tiger's Head, like that.
That's an awful peak, though.
Yes. No, but you could do.
I went up there one time finally, and it was like awful.
Yeah, but you could do a loop. I mean, I don't know if you might not need to go to the actual peak. You could just do a loop around.
Or maybe three golf course roads, or 2.5 or something. Keep it on the road.
Golf course road would be pretty grim after a while. But that doesn't go up to 369.
No, that's what I'm saying. You do it twice or something. It's like 1.6K to like El Pico, 1.7K to El Pico. Then you do that twice or something. Anyways, different day. I like it though. I like it.
We've got anything else that you want to talk about before we go?
No, I think that was a good session with Andy, and I think obviously people, if they do have questions about coaches, can reach out to myself or you as well. If people are interested or want advice on it, I'd be happy to give my perspective to folks who are looking for that. And I'm sure you would do the same.
Yeah, and one thing which Andy didn't mention is that the other Mile 27 coaches, they were all people that were previously coached by him, and he deliberately plans it that way because he doesn't want to take on coaches who don't appreciate how much time he puts into the coaching. So he wants coaches to have experienced being coached by him in order to coach other people in a similar manner. Obviously, they have their own strengths and styles, and so they're not going to be exactly carbon copies of Andy. But if you go to the 27 website, you can see that it's quite transparent about different pricing plans according to different experience levels of the coaches.
Yeah, and I know a couple people using the other coaches, and they say nothing but good things as well about the other coaches. And like you said, Andy's obviously the top tier cost wise, but those other coaches are a little less expensive, and have different backgrounds and options and techniques and such like that. So it's Mile 27. I think top to bottom, good coaching.
Yeah, and I really enjoy his podcast series as well, and some of the blog articles. Like there's one blog article where he talks about the Hong Kong 100 and pacing and why you should pace the beginning of an ultra conservatively, and he's actually crunched the numbers of all the athletes that he's ever coached. I mean, up until a few years ago when he crunched the numbers, all the athletes that he's coached that have ever done the Hong Kong 100 and crunched the data and proved that people that start too fast end up slower than they would have done if they had paced it well at the beginning. So
that's.
Let's say you do the first half an hour faster than would be recommended for somebody with your skills, then you'll end up being overall an hour or two slower than if you'd pace it appropriately. No, that's critical of those longer races. Yeah, it's easy to get tempted when people are passing you early on, and you're like, oh, I'm going too slow. But you got to do your own race, and pacing is critical. Yeah, I think a lot of people also look at these races where they have live coverage of races, and you see the elites when they are running past High Island Dam, then they look like they're running flat out. But of course, that is an easy pace for them, as they can run a lot faster than that if they wanted to.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of good articles and things like that. In fact, if there's anything you want to look up, like say if you want to look up, say, cramping, if you search cramping Mile 27, then you'll get Andy's take on cramping, which is quite interesting. And the causes of cramping are a bit hard to decipher, but I think he does a good job of deciphering all the information there is out there.
Yeah, I've listened to a few of his articles and videos and such. It's all been very helpful. And
the philosophy of Mile 27 is also quite funny. There's coaching that takes you the extra mile because it's a mile that's longer than a marathon.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, love the name. Yeah.
All right, I think we should wrap it up there so this podcast doesn't get too long. And I've also got another podcast to work on coming soon, so I'll talk to you again soon about that.
Yeah, I'm excited about the next one.
All right, thanks, Michael.
Yeah, no problem. See you later.